Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, guys. Today, we're unpacking one of the most chilling, documented true stories of a family pushed to the absolute brink. We are looking at the Shea family, their time in a deeply haunted historic century home in Arkansas, and the devastating real-world consequences of living in constant supernatural fear. Grab a seat, maybe leave the lights on, because this one, it gets incredibly intense. So imagine you've just moved into your absolute dream home, right? You're settling in, you run out to get groceries for the week, and a worker at the local Walmart stops you at the door and says exactly this. Yeah, this is the literal warning Jaime Shea received just weeks after moving her family in. The worker even casually dropped a local legend about a young boy falling to his death from one of the upstairs windows. Now, as you'll see, Jaime totally brushed this off at first, but honestly, it was a massive red flag of what was about to happen.
Section 1. A deal too good. Moving into the Arkansas Century home.
Now, what's truly staggering here is just the sheer, bizarrely fragmented history of this property in Lamar, Arkansas. Back in October 2003, Jaime and Ben Shea bought this massive colonial home for a price that was, frankly, way lower than similar houses in the area. They needed the space, you know? They had 3 kids, 10-year-old Tori, 5-year-old Bridger, and little 8-month-old baby Jackson. But this wasn't just some standard old family home. It had dates spanning all the way back to the late 1700s etched into its 4 fireplaces. I mean, over the years, this building had been a stagecoach stop, a speakeasy, and literally a county jail. Oh, and I almost forgot. There was a Confederate cemetery from the 1800s sitting just 100 yards behind their back door. Wild, right? It is honestly amazing what we're willing to ignore when we just desperately want a place to be perfect. During their first walkthrough, the Sheas found an upstairs fireplace boarded up. And painted on those boards, a literal pentagram, melted candles from what looked like a seance, and the full first and last name of a dead boy. But Jaime and Ben, they just rationalized it. They figured, hey, local kids probably just broke into the vacant house to play pranks, right? They even completely brushed off a woman at a yard sale who touched their porch railing and immediately warned them she felt a lot of spirits in the house.
Section 2. Whispers in the dark. The escalation begins.
You know, the human brain desperately wants to make sense of the nonsensical. At first, the family leaned hard on rationalizations. Ben was working night shifts as a nurse, and they had a babysitter, Desta, helping out. Well, one time, Ben wakes up to baby Jackson crying on the monitor, but he goes in and finds an empty room because Desta had already taken Jackson downstairs. He just kept it to himself. But pretty soon, the reality became literally impossible to ignore. They started hearing 3 loud, distinct fist knocks right above their heads in bed. They'd hear heavy footsteps. At one point, they both clearly heard what sounded exactly like a rubber ball bouncing down the wooden stairs while they were just sitting there watching TV. And the thing is, the activity didn't target everyone equally. 5-year-old Bridger, he took the absolute brunt of it. It got to the point where he was terrified to sleep in his own room. He kept telling his parents about hearing multiple people talking over each other, like this chaotic noise he couldn't quite understand. Plus, his electronic toys would just randomly activate in the dead of night. And bizarrely, the house seemed to literally drain energy. The light bulbs in the hallway leading to his room, which, by the way, was the same hallway with that boarded-up pentagram, would just constantly burn out. The parents even bought these battery-operated touch lamps to help him feel safe, and they were completely drained in a single hour. They had an electrician come out, check the whole place, and he found absolutely nothing wrong. So this brings us to the terrifying climax of the house's early escalation. First, Jaime and Bridger are working on the computer one night when they both clearly see a distinct shadow walk right behind them in the monitor's reflection. Then, a bit later, Bridger comes downstairs, but he's completely in a trance. Jaime says he got right up in her face and started laughing, this horrifying, unnatural laugh she'd never heard from him before, and she couldn't even snap him out of it. Right after that, the family dog suddenly bolts upstairs and starts aggressively barking at a completely empty corner of Bridger's bed, like it had something cornered. And the kicker? As they retreat downstairs, they find the dog's heavy leash has been mysteriously moved from its hook on the wall directly to the middle of the stairs. Right then and there, Jaime realized she absolutely could not explain this away anymore. Section 3. Tragedy strikes the Sheas. The breaking point. By this point, the paranormal activity in the house was just unbearably obvious. Visual apparitions started manifesting left and right. Ben saw the tail end of a Victorian gown sweep up the stairs. Jaime saw an unexplainable thin stream of pipe smoke just rising from an empty kitchen counter. They even saw the distinct outline of a shadowy figure standing in the upstairs window. And these visual manifestations, They all peaked on the very day the family's world was turned completely upside down. That exact same day, Jaime was driving the kids home from school. It was just a short 3-mile drive. She swerved to dodge a misplaced construction barrel in her lane, overcorrected, and their minivan flipped completely head over heels down a steep embankment. The two boys were buckled in, but 13-year-old Tori was ejected and actually pinned underneath the overturned vehicle. Now, miraculously, heavy rains in the days prior had softened the mud, which allowed Tori to sink into the earth just enough to survive. She did suffer severe compression fractures in her back, though, but what's really fascinating here is Jaime's firm stance on this. She does not believe a ghost caused this wreck. Instead, she fully believes that the sheer, unending sleep deprivation and extreme stress from living in a haunted house caused her to lose focus. The entity didn't take the wheel, you know? The absolute exhaustion took her capacity to drive safely. 10. That is the grueling number of days Tori spent fighting in the ICU and the hospital before she was finally stable enough to even return home. I mean, it was just a massive, absolutely devastating toll on the entire family.
Section 4. Contacting the other side. The investigation.
So needing answers, the team brought in psychic mediums, including a woman named Violet Lowe. And the very moment Violet approached 5-year-old Bridger's bedroom, she noted this heavy, intense shift in energy. She described feeling completely surrounded by negative spirits. She called it a sea of people, or a crowd. And honestly, this instantly validated poor Bridger's earlier complaints of hearing dozens of overlapping voices in his room that he just couldn't understand. The investigation team then decided to use a Ouija board to attempt direct communication. They asked for a name, and the board spelled out S-E-T-H, Seth. But it's the follow-up question that is just truly chilling. The investigators asked, "When were you alive?" And the board immediately spelled out N-E-V-E-R, never. Never. This wasn't the ghost of some French trapper or a fallen child from the 1800s. This was a non-human, seemingly demonic entity just straight up revealing itself.
And this is exactly where we see just how dangerous it is to tap into the unknown. Right after spelling never, the planchette began moving in a rapid figure 8. If you don't know, that's a repetitive motion often associated with an entity, gathering energy, or even attempting to escape the confines of the board. Then, the planchette just stopped and pointed directly at the team's video camera. Meanwhile, in the other room, the technical specialist is looking at the monitor and literally watches a tall, transparent, shadowy human figure form right out of the ceiling, linger on the camera for a second, and then vanish. Just completely terrifying.
Section 5. No escaping the haunting. The final straw.
Now, after the investigation, the mediums did a Native American sage cleansing. It helped briefly, but the house soon turned ice cold again and felt intensely malicious. That was it. The Sheas decided to rent it out and move. Interestingly, their story gained so much traction that a production company actually filmed a documentary for the Discovery Channel show A Haunting back in 2007. But, as TV often does, the reality got manipulated. The producers literally added a phantom ghost jumping in front of Jaime's car to cause the crash. And Jaime was furious about this. She insists the true story, the sheer psychological breakdown caused by an unseen force inside your own home, was way more terrifying than some made-up Hollywood ghost taking the wheel. So the family did try one last time to return to the house, just hoping the time away had calmed things down. They were sitting in the kitchen around 6 or 7 p.m., having a totally normal family evening playing cards. They popped a burned CD into the player to listen to some background music. But suddenly, the player aggressively jumped straight to track 99. And out of the speakers came this voice on an endless, looping repeat saying, "You need to help. You need to help. You need to help." They frantically searched the track list later, and there was absolutely no song with those lyrics anywhere on that CD. That horrifying, inescapable digital voice, that was the absolute final straw. They packed up whatever they could that very night and fled the house forever. Which brings us to the aftermath. The Shea family abandoned the house for good. Jaime walked away from this whole nightmare with one profound realization. Your home absolutely must be a sanctuary. When outside paranormal stressors infiltrate your safe space, it can literally destroy a family's mental and physical health. But Jaime didn't let the trauma silence her. As of 2025, she actually co-hosts a podcast called The Unexplained Archives, where she dives into paranormal stories and shares the very real, terrifying truth of what her family survived. So the really crucial point I want to leave you with today is this. Did the entities residing in that century-old house actively cause the chaos that almost killed a child? Or
Did the family's extreme, compounding stress and exhaustion feed a haunting that might have otherwise just laid dormant? It's such a fascinating look at the terrifying intersection of human psychology and the paranormal. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning.